What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Thursday sports edition of the Slate. And boy, oh boy, is this going to be a day. For the next 45 minutes or so, we are here with you, Adam Kaufman. And off the top of the show to celebrate all things NBA, because this is day one of NBA free agency. At least it will be in right around 45 minutes. Nick Fryer, DK contributor, a little bit later on. REID FOWLER is going to jump in, maybe offer some of his NBA thoughts, but of course, talk John Deere Classic round one going on as well. But Nick, slow news day in the NBA.
Yep. Pretty boring. As everybody says, the NBA offseason is like the most boring thing in the world.
Awful. Yeah.
Very
slow.
I know that these guys all talk to teams beforehand, but I seriously can't believe that we already got one agreement on a signing with Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, if anyone missed it, I think it was Shams Charania from The Athletic that sent out the tweet just a couple of minutes ago. And this was the expectation. This isn't new, except for the fact that it looks like it's imminent, i.e., will be signed or finalized, agreed upon. Nothing will be finalized till after the moratorium next week, but at least, will be sort of celebrated as official. Jalen Brunson going to the Knicks, which, they've been furiously clearing cap space in order to do that and pull him away from the Mavs in general. I guess sort of the only real wrinkle there, the only interesting thing is that Brunson must have been unhappy enough in Dallas playing alongside Luka and the rest of the gang, at least within his role. I'm not saying in a personal way, but not happy enough in his role to where he didn't even give the Mavs a chance to make him an offer, to have a conversation. It was just, nope, I'm going to the Knicks.
Well, I mean, you're going to go, I think, didn't he have a relative get added to the coaching staff in New York too? I think that was a thing, but 4 years, $100 million, like those kind of things, like how is he going to say no to something like that? I don't know if the Mavs are necessarily going to give him that kind of money. I'm sure he had to have some semblance of an idea, because if he's having conversations with the Knicks already, he absolutely was having them with the Mavs in some capacity too. So I can't, look, you're going bag chasing. I understand it. You're not going to win anything with the Knicks when you're one of their highest paid guys, if not the highest paid guy in New York at this point. So I understand that. You're young, get the money while you can, making off, what you did in the postseason and everything. I respect it. But anybody who's signing with the Knicks these days is pretty much just doing it to get a job and to get paid. You're not doing it to win, because the Knicks don't win, flat out.
We've got Eamon, our producer, also undercover boss Tom T. Pike is our technical director. If you could, T. Pike, let's throw up our screen share here. Our odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook for championship favorites next year, of course, on the heels of Nick and my beloved Celtics falling in 6 games to the Golden State Warriors. Shouldn't shock anybody. The Warriors and the C's are both right there among the championship favorites. But just as we talk about the Knicks and Jalen Brunson, you scroll down. It's look at the Knicks. It's plus 15,000 to win the championship. So safe to say that Jalen Brunson going to New York is not significantly impacting things.
No, surprisingly, he's not moving the needle enough. I mean, who could have guessed that? I'm curious though, because I didn't look at the top though. I'm just curious how much further down are the Brooklyn Nets. Oh, actually, no, the Brooklyn Nets have better odds still. That's kind of surprising, because
aren't they supposed to be near the top? Where's Brooklyn? What happened to Brooklyn? Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, we'll get there. Plus 5,000 for the Nets, who are perfectly mediocre with respect to the championship odds now.
Do you want to get into the Nets now? I mean,
look, in the interest of time, we may as well, because that's the bombshell of the day, even though, again, not totally unexpected if you've just been paying attention to the offseason and reading the tea leaves. But, Kyrie Irving, in theory, opts back in. I do believe that's genuine. Doesn't mean he's going to be a net next year, but he does opt back in. Then we have the news today that Kevin Durant has officially requested a trade out of Brooklyn. Now, this is, I want your read on this, obviously, because there are takes and thoughts and whatever opinions all over the place as to whether KD doesn't want to be with Kyrie and that's why he wants out. Maybe he's just looking at the rest of that roster, even though it has, a hampered, and, we don't know what to expect from Ben Simmons coming back next year, although he's back to working out and all of that. Or does he just not want to be in Brooklyn, still wants to be with Kyrie, and the two of them could get traded somewhere together if, people can find a way to make that money work. So this is so far from over. Like, there are so many different ways that this could shake out. What do you think?
So I have a very, very difficult time imagining that the two get traded together.
Agreed.
For no other reason, it's just like moving 2-star contracts like that anywhere else. And then having seen,
you're moving like $80 million.
Yeah. And then having seen what Kyrie Irving just went through, like I'm not, or the Nets with Kyrie Irving, I should say, I have to imagine that it's still going to be really hard to move him in any capacity too. So we could very well see a situation, as much as the Nets are trying to move him right now, because I know Woj was reporting that as well. I could very realistically imagine like Kyrie still being with the Nets for a portion of the season, if not the entirety of the 2022-2023 season. As for Kevin Durant, look, I mean, over the years when I was covering them, when they first went to Brooklyn, trying to read the tea leaves a little bit and how Kevin Durant talked about Kyrie, and he was always just kind of like, let Kyrie be who he is. He's an artist. Let him be himself. All these different things.
Mm-hmm.
He was very laid back about it. So, and then he goes and obviously, gets this extension and everything, and now he's done after everything that happened with Kyrie. I could see it where Kevin Durant's like, I don't want to deal with Kyrie anymore. I could see that being the case, but I really am leaning towards him being annoyed with how they handled Kyrie, because they are apparently still buds, and not trusting that he's going to be there for the long haul, and not wanting to be in Brooklyn for the long haul if Kyrie's not there. Because the whole impression I've gotten from day one is Kevin Durant just wanted to play with Kyrie Irving. He wanted to have his own. He wanted to be the leader on a team.
That's why they went to Brooklyn in the first place.
Exactly. Go to Brooklyn and then you make it your own thing. But now without Kyrie there, where Kyrie's the one that wanted to be in Brooklyn, I think Kevin Durant, I mean, we're seeing he wants to go play possibly for the Suns, possibly for the Heat. He just wants to contend for a title. And at this stage now, after the Warriors went and did it without him again, I think he just wants a ring. It doesn't matter where he's getting it from.
Which is so interesting too, because like if ever there were a guy that doesn't need to go ring chasing, like he did that once already. He did that with the Warriors and he won a couple. He doesn't need to do that again right now, short of just, I guess, believing that your legacy is fully decided by your hardware.
He is, Adam.
Yeah,
he's a ring chaser, like more to the nth degree, I guess. Yeah. Like no one else we've ever seen, apparently.
And we don't yet, and we will, so stay tuned. But we don't yet, and I don't know if it'll happen during this show because obviously the news is fresh, but we don't yet have odds on the DraftKings Sportsbook as to Kevin Durant's next team. But do keep an eye out for that, because I'm certain it's coming. And then obviously you can, place bets on that. The rumored reported favorites are Miami as well as Phoenix. I think it'd be, either one would be interesting in its own way. I guess just first with going back to the Kyrie thing with, these two, I don't know. Like, obviously everybody remembers the All-Star game photo and the 2 max slots and all of that stuff, but it is possible because like you said, they're still buds. I'm sure they are. Like, I don't think they had the same falling out that let's say like, James Harden had with those guys, or at least had, with Kevin Durant as we remember from the most recent All-Star game and the draft and all of that drama. But, some people just sort of decide like, you know what, like we're friends, but maybe we shouldn't work together, or like, hey, we could still be close, but maybe we shouldn't be married. Like some people split up and just remain friends. That might be what this is. Like it just didn't, we didn't necessarily connect on the court as well. And, they really only had a portion of 2 seasons together. I don't know how many total games they actually played together, but I think it was less than 100. Like it wasn't even a big number, including the playoffs, but it very clearly, whether health, COVID, attitude, depth, whatever, like paint the picture however you want, it didn't work. It just didn't work.
No, it didn't. And I think in the end, like, Kevin Durant obviously had missed that whole first year because he was still recovering from his Achilles thing, which to me on the surface, I looked at this when he requested the trade and thought, well, that's kind of lame. Like, you go inside this extension. This team has been nothing but great to you since you got there. They were understanding of all your rehab and everything like that. And to me, and they were very patient throughout the entire process. And now you just go and request this move for a guy who supposedly, for obviously already has a couple rings and supposedly thinks he can go and do it himself. At least I thought he could do it himself. It's just a strange move. You still have another year with Kyrie Irving. And if you don't care about where you're playing, you just want to go and win the ring yourself. This is an odd move because you could still do it. And you could still get somebody to come to Brooklyn after Kyrie's gone too, if the Nets don't want to re-sign him. But I think in the end, as much as there could be something to what you're saying, Adam, I think there is still a level of loyalty there with these two guys. We've seen it with Kyrie and how he talks about Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has done nothing to indicate like in public eye that him and Kyrie have issues. So, and I've not heard anything. So I got to imagine that this is more, if Kyrie's not going to be here long term, then I'm not going to be here long term. Then I don't want to waste my time any further. Get me somewhere else so I can start building that chemistry.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Kyrie ends up, traded to the Lakers or something like that. Maybe there's a Westbrook move. I don't know. Obviously,
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, reunite him, put him back in LeBron's shadow, all of that stuff. Something to be explored down the road. But obviously, Durant being the big news of the day. Again, Miami and Phoenix are the two teams being most talked about from the various reporters out there, including Adrian Wojnarowski. And I wonder, obviously, ultimately, what gets it done. I think that an important reminder, because this is often talked about on Twitter, the Nets should have no interest, and I don't believe they do, by the way, in accommodating Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving if that time comes. He's multiple years left on his contract. They're going to lose a star player, one of the best in the NBA. Some would say still the best in the NBA, even at his, advanced age. He's north of 30, but they don't have any. Houston's controlling their draft picks the next several years because of the James Harden deal. They have no draft picks. They want players. They're going to want players. So who has the best package ultimately to flatter the Nets and not cater to Durant, but to flatter the Nets? Is it Miami? Is it Phoenix? Is it another team that we're not even talking about? Because again, there shouldn't be any loyalty to KD there.
It depends on what teams want to make available, right? If you're talking about the Celtics and they want to make Jaylen Brown available, I think that's a great offer. I think, and obviously it would take more than just Jaylen Brown.
Sure.
You look at the Miami Heat, if they want to make Bam Adebayo available, I think that would be an even better addition. Although as much as it's a big man, so you can't build around him necessarily in the same way. But Bam and Kyrie and Ben Simmons would still be a good team. That's not a title contending team, but that's still a good team. Even if it was Ben Simmons and Bam Adebayo, now you have a great defense. You just kind of need to get a scorer, and Ben Simmons, well, whatever with Ben Simmons. But you look at the Suns, that's a tough one. Because was it DeAndre Ayton that you're going to make that move? Like you're going to do a sign and trade there, get an extension for him, and then move on with him. I can't imagine the Suns one necessarily working out as much as unless they wanted to move on from like a Devin Booker, which would be kind of weird given how important he's been to the team and how good they've been over the last couple of years. Obviously, the injuries hurt them in the postseason. I would say the other one too, if for some reason Kevin Durant so teaming up with the Warriors was like rock bottom for him in the sense of like just having no shape. The only thing that could potentially be worse, if nothing else, just at least rival it, would be if he wanted to go to the Lakers and then they did a deal for Anthony Davis, and now you'd have Kevin Durant and you had a LeBron James. I think that's an out of left field kind of thing, but money wise, I think it'd be a little bit easier to do. I think for Brooklyn, they'd be more open to it as well. Again, now you have Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons. Even if you get rid of Kyrie, you're going to get something decent in return. And now it's Ben Simmons and AD. I don't know how long AD is going to want to be in Brooklyn, but I think the money could work out.
Or just, like we were joking about before, like really up the ante, make it AD and Westbrook and send, Kyrie and Durant there together with LeBron.
That would be something. I would be interested in watching how that Brooklyn team turns out. I don't think it would be pretty, but I'd be interested. And I don't think it'd be.
I don't think the Lakers would either.
Yeah, no, I don't either, because Kyrie in LA sounds like an odd mix too. No, but those are some of the ones that jump out. Obviously Celtics because we're in Boston. Sure. But I mean, if he's gonna go to the Heat, it's gonna take a big guy. I agree with you, Adam. Like you do want to move him because you want to try and start the rebuild process now, but you don't want to do like a hard reset necessarily if you're Brooklyn. But you got to get something in return. You can't just go and say, hey, yeah, here's Kevin Durant. Like this is as good a trade piece as you're ever going to get because you don't want to trade this guy.
So it's sort of funny because Jalen Brunson isn't this star player, but he is the guy that people have been talking the most about with respect to free agency, maybe because his domino was the most well-known. It seemed, like such a foregone conclusion. Yeah, he's going to wind up with the Knicks. And obviously that report is out there. So now with that off the burner, as you look ahead to 6:00 Eastern, only about a half hour away in the official start to free agency, what's the next, big news? Who's the, what are we waiting for Woj and Shams and Stein and whoever else to bring us here in terms of landing spots?
Yeah, so I mean, there's quite a few guys right that are available. Obviously, we talked about Ayton before, but he's a restricted free agent. The next big ones, like ahead of Brunson, are LaVine, Ayton, Harden, and Beal. Ayton is a bit of a question mark, but he's still restricted. Harden, we assume he's just restructuring things as reports indicate. So it seems like they're good there. They're just trying to make room for somebody else. So it comes down to LaVine and Beal. I don't have as good a read on LaVine. And honestly, Beal's a weird one too, because we've heard reports indicating that he could still try and, sign an extension, get more money, all these things. And Beal's a guy where it's like, okay, you're gonna go and get a scorer. Levine, kind of the same deal, but I just don't like. I don't know. I'm very low on Beal because I know, again, Celtics, they getting linked to him and they want him. Jason Tatum and him are buddies. I just don't know how that would necessarily work with a team like Boston. If Beal goes and signs with, stays with the Wizards, they better have a plan to try and bring somebody in. Otherwise, like, what is Bradley Beal doing? Like, he's not playing to win. He's playing to just get paid, which, hey, you can do that. But at the end of the day, like, I thought you were trying to win too. Levine's the wild card here that could be really interesting. Again, if the money's, obviously an issue when you're dealing with cap space and everything like that and hard caps and whatnot. But when you look at these teams like the Suns, if they can't bring a guy like Ayton back in necessarily, and there's money, wiggle room, trying to get a guy like Beal, trying to get a guy like Levine, where if you're trying to add Kevin Durant, as much as he's, much bigger player than those guys and can play more of the 4, possibly a 5 on a small ball team, if you're trying to add another scoring option, though, those are 2 guys where I would think they'd fit there. And again, I don't know if you can necessarily go and do something like that, but other weird names that are out there too. John Wall's an odd one. Bruce Brown is going to be a great asset on a championship team. Like, he was with the Nets and did well. I think he could be a great ad for somebody. And same with PJ Tucker, not to the same degree anymore, but still a guy who I think a winning and contending team could still have on their roster.
All right. Well, a lot to keep an eye on, obviously. Friars facts as we get closer to the start of free agency again, only about a half hour from now. Nick, we appreciate you taking some of your evening with us. And I'm sure that you and all of us, for that matter, will be glued to Twitter a little bit later on, just constantly refreshing, seeing what's coming up.
Phone is going to be nuts. I mean, just so many other guys I'm not even talking about. Gary Harris, Patty Mills, Gary Payton II. It just go on. But you have to go talk golf with Sweet Tea Fowler, I heard.
It's true. Although I do love talking to you, but yeah, let's welcome in Reed and Nick. We'll bid you adieu, but thank you for hopping on with us. We'll make sure you always catch Nick not only here on the Slate from time to time, but pretty frequently on the Sweat Monday through Friday mornings, talking NBA, baseball, and whatever else is going on inside his wheelhouse of expertise. Nick Fryer. Yes, let's bring in Reed T. Fowler. You're very welcome, sir, because there is golf going on. It's sort of a watered down field. We were talking about it during the week at the John Deere Classic, but nevertheless, golf is golf, and that's just Reed's happy place. That just puts him in a good mood, my friend. How are you?
It does and it doesn't, Kaufman. If you were following me on, I don't think I was tweeting because I was driving.
That's good.
I actually
not a safe thing.
Yeah. I had a Sahith, and I've mentioned this multiple times. I had a Sahith Theegala ticket at 150 at plus 15,000 last week that would have paid for multiple Disney trips.
So
that'd have been. I'll be sending Sahith Theegala's team a strongly worded letter saying you are a great player. I love watching you play, but maybe throw me some Bitcoin so I can take the family to the happiest place on earth.
There you go. So I guess I should ask you then, who is going to be the runner-up this week?
No kidding. If it's any of my players, it's probably going to be Smotherman, Svensson, any one of those players. I think Scott Stallings was another one that I really liked. So yeah, I mean, look, this tournament, like you mentioned, it's void of pretty much anybody in the top 50. And there's a lot to be said on the landscape of golf. But for this tournament specifically, right, it's anyone's game. Like Poston is, at 9 under right now. Mm-hmm. He had an amazing round, but I mean, we've seen these things flip. And this tournament, you probably have to shoot in the mid 20 under to win this. And look, you can shoot 9 under today, and then tomorrow, if you shoot 2 under, and a bunch of guys shoot 5, 6 under, they're only 1 or 2 shots back, right? And that's extremely in the realm of possibility.
You said it. JT Poston's in front right now by 3 shots as things stand. You have Vaughn Taylor, Ricky Barnes, not to be confused with Ricky Vaughn from Major League, Denny McCarthy, among others. All these guys, you have a host of players that are 4 shots under. So it's a very crowded board, obviously, in the top, let's call it 15 or so. And it's only day one, so we got a long ways to go. But how tough is it, from a betting perspective, just sort of navigating a field like this when you don't have sort of all those guys that we regularly perceive as sure things week in and week out to at least make the cut?
Well, for people like myself and maybe to you included to an extent, right, is like I know who these players are. right? Like I have an idea of who most of these players are, but at the same time, you're right? Like the casual fan's not going to tune into the John Deere Classic as heavily as those who are betting. That's why it's, have a little stake in it. And that's what makes it a lot more fun if that's, your bag. But this is a tournament that either has given way to multiple winners. So guys like Zach Johnson or, Steve Stricker before he withdrew, they can come to Dylan Fratelli right now, who's at 3 under through 12. They can come to this tournament and say, okay, like if I'm in a little bit of a slump and I played well here and I've won, I can come back and I can win again, because that's what we've seen in the past, right? Guys who've played well before can keep on playing well here because the course kind of lends to that. It's also giving guys their first win, right? Jordan Spieth had his first win here. Bryson, I believe, had his first win here. Fratelli, I think, also as well. So there's been a lot of guys who have broken through at the John Deere Classic, and that's kind of what these tournaments need, right? Are those new players breaking way and winning these golf tournaments.
I always ask you, but here on day one, again, we're not complete, but anyone that surprised you a little bit, one way or the other, obviously, I know that Poston probably shouldn't be shocking. He's a guy that we've been talking about a lot in recent weeks. So the fact that he's the top of the leaderboard is not, overly surprising news, but anyone that has over or underperformed in your eyes so far?
Well, Adam Schenk, I think it was a favorite of a lot of people in the industry, including myself. He withdrew today, shot 77. So he shot 6 over. I don't know if that was his pride that was broken or if there's something that's actually, if he's injured. That's a little alarming because he was coming into this week. He missed the cut last week, but still, like Adam Hadwin, he was the shortest in odds, and he's at 4 over through 16. So, I mean, when you think about it, right, you could have said, okay, who are the two best? I mean, him and Webb Simpson were 1 and 2. And like he's almost 4th from last, I believe it is, 5th, 6th, 7th, right? Like he's basically almost last place. I mean, Matt Every's at 10 over. But like when you talk about 4 over, that's not great. Other guys that have actually performed well. Look, Vaughn Taylor is someone that's been on the PGA Tour for a very long time, and he shot 6 under and he bogeyed the 9th hole. He bogeyed 18. So he bogeying both the 9th and the 18th. He could have been right there at 8 under. That's extremely surprising. Like Ricky Barnes, Chris Nagel, there's some names that you don't usually see on the leaderboard, and that's what you get with these type of tournaments. But yeah, probably the most surprising is Adam Hadwin at 4 over.
I was just looking at some of my lineups, Reed, because I hadn't been really dialed into them today so much.
Oh, surprising.
And, I know, right? Well, John Deere Classic, right? But yeah, of course, naturally I have Schenk in one of them, but Pendrith is evidently a guy that I should have pulled out earlier because I've got him in one of my builds.
Yeah, he withdrew as well. But again, like that's what you have to do, right? Is you have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse with these because, every now and then, like the John Deere Classic, this is what I always say about this tournament and every time on the PGA Tour. It's 500 FedEx Cup points. You win this tournament, you win over $1 million, and you get 2-year job security. So this is still a big deal. This is a big deal to a lot of these guys, especially the younger players who want to keep their tour card. They circle this tournament and they say, this is the tournament that I want to win, especially when you talk about the field, right? The field is weaker than usual, actually much weaker than usual. So it's really up for the taking. Anybody can win this golf tournament.
What do we, as you look at obviously the DK Sportsbook right now, Poston, again, 3-shot leader. He's plus 250 to win outright. Top 5 is minus 140. And then it's such a colossal drop-off, Reed, when trying to estimate, obviously, the outright winners anyway. McCarthy, Stallings, Taylor, Svensson, list goes on, obviously. If you're looking at a guy with longer odds, which kind of feels like everybody outside of, Poston, how do you determine a favorite right now for, like you said, all these guys, and obviously most people that are golf fans do, but for, some of the people that are on the outside looking in that just want to be involved this weekend, how do you determine, what direction to go in?
I mean, it's anything, right? It's kind of like last week. Someone can get a hot putter. Like Scott Stallings, he was almost dead last in Cromwell at TPC River Highlands for the Travelers, and he goes and he shoots 64, 68, 63, right? And he finishes 8th place. Now, he didn't get it done, so, that's moot when you're talking about who can actually win from that far back. But historically, right, if you take a look at the winners' cough, I'm just pulling up how much back they were after their win. Lucas Glover after round 1 was 5 back. Fratelli was 4 back. Michael Kim was 1 back, and Michael Kim shot 27 under. He shot 27 under in 2018 to win this. Bryson was 3 back. Right. So every single person, like Jordan Spieth in 2015, 8 back. And in 2013, Spieth was 6 back. Every single winner since 2010 was not in the lead after round 1. Right. So that's something that you have to consider as well. You want me to, I can host a show if you need me to.
I'm sorry. I'm having I wish I could call it a technical breakdown over here, but it's a very personal breakdown. That does not involve technology at all, but I'm surviving to some extent. But yeah, what do you want to look out for? And I apologize, some of this is a little repetitive, but what are you looking for as we get to round 2 and the weekend? What's the differentiation factor here off of the way the course played in round 1, obviously looking ahead?
Yeah, I don't think there's any differentiating, right? You got to find the guy he's going to make a ton of birdies, who's going to get hot with the putter. Like Xander Schauffele, like last week, he played extremely well the first couple of days, and that kind of saved him because he didn't play like himself on the weekend, especially not on Sunday. Again, he shouldn't have won that golf tournament, but he did, right? So Heath Gall lost it. But you want someone who's not going to make bogeys. You cannot make bogeys here. Making a bogey here on any hole, I don't care if it's the toughest hole in the course. Like you're giving back more to the field than in most other tournaments. If the winning score is going to be in the 20s, you have to make, right, just by math, you have to shoot 5 under every round. So you have to shoot 66 or better every single round. So if you're making bogeys, and there's some guys out there who are really good at that, that I put on my betting card in my DFS lineups, you're done, especially after day 1, right? Like and again, I mentioned Scott Stallings almost dead last, but he is an outlier, right? That is an outlier performance. So if you're betting outrights, yes, you want to make sure, like, you're basically hoping for the needle in the haystack, so to speak, especially after round 1. Well, not especially after round 1, especially pre-tournament, but after round 1, you get some evidence of how the course is playing, how the guys are playing. But like I just mentioned, over the last 11 years, no one who has had the lead in the beginning of the tournament on Thursday has won this golf tournament. No one.
Why do you suppose that is?
It's just because, like, there's so many birdies to be had here, right? To keep that going, like, if someone's like Poston shooting 9 under 62, can he keep that going? And especially on the weekend, if you're in that last group and it gets a little hot, and all of the players have gone before you, like, it's just, there's a chaser mentality of making birdies when you have to, and B, you can, right? Like I said, you've seen guys here win this golf tournament from very far back. Like Lucas Glover last year was 4 back going into the final round. Fratelli was 2 back. Bryson was 4 back, right? Jordan, again, in 2013 was 6 back. Zach Johnson was 4 back, right? So you can win this golf tournament like being in like 12th place coming into Sunday. And that's what you need to look for. You need to save a little bit after day 1. And if there's guys out there, like, look, if Webb Simpson just makes the cut, right, and his odds are plus 5,000 to win the golf tournament on Saturday, right? Like, and he's 8 back after round 2. Like, that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility. Like, 8 might be a lot, but like, let's say he's 5 or 4 back, right? Like, that's not a bad bet. Maybe he won't be plus 5,000, but that's not a bad bet if you're thinking about, saving some for the weekend.
Is this just generally an expected lull, like year to year, obviously, going back a couple weeks, we had the US Open, then we had the Travelers, which wasn't quite the same field as the US Open, but it was still, representative. But now you get into the John Deere Classic, it's not. We talked about it after that, Barbasol Championship, Scottish Open being played the same weekend next weekend. Just as that lead in to obviously the British Open, where, then everybody's going to be back. It's a major, it's a big deal. So is this just kind of this 2-3 week, largely a respite more than anything else, where it's some of these unheralded guys that we're not used to talking as much about, and sort of focusing in on watching as the odds do or don't change ultimately for the Open Championship in a few weeks or a couple weeks.
Yeah, a little bit, right? And there's other things that could be factoring into this, right? But yeah, and like I said, 500 FedEx Cup points, 2-year exemption, you win more than $1 million, at this tournament. But yeah, I mean, like, you take a look at it, the Genesis Scottish Open is now a co-sanctioned event with the PGA Tour and the DP World Tour. So players now are getting FedEx Cup points when they play that golf tournament. That's massive, right? That's massive. So, and on top of that, you're going to be there a week early. You're going to be accustomed to the climate, to the time zone, everything, right? The Renaissance Club where the Scottish Open is being played next week is not necessarily as old and historic as St. Andrews, but it's on the water. It's pseudo linksy, right? Again, not as linksy as St. Andrews, but like, it just makes more sense. And if you look at the field next week, Koff, it's the who's who, right? Everyone's there. Everyone is playing that golf tournament. So yeah, right. Especially if you played Travelers last week, you're not going to travel to Silvis, Illinois from Connecticut and then, right, pack up your bags and go. The guys who aren't playing the Scottish Open, yeah, I mean, if you win this and you don't have an invitation to the Masters, you get an invitation to the Masters if you win the John Deere Classic.
How dialed in have I just want to mention, I'm sort of, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking at Twitter as well to keep an eye on NBA things. And Brian Whithorse says that the Lakers could potentially put together a package that lands Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So folks, what Nick Fryer and I were just talking about, 10 minutes ago is a possibility, according to Brian Windhorst. Maybe we'll get some thoughts from Reed on the NBA in a little bit as well. But staying with golf here for the moment, how dialed in have you been on Live Golf in this tournament going on in Portland this weekend, with obviously, more defectors from the PGA and ultimately bigger names starting to take part?
Yeah, I mean, it's, there's only so much bandwidth, right? This, especially as a new father, like, you don't have a ton of time and a lot of energy. Yeah. But still, right, it's our job to make sure that we're in the know, that we're plugged in a little bit more than the casual person. So yeah, I've been following a little bit, and like, I'm not so much following breaking down the golf course as much as I am on the PGA Tour, right? Because that's just there's a lot that goes into that. There's, when you look at that course, and I forget the name's escaping me right now, where they're playing Pumpkin Ridge, I believe it is. Right, like there's a lot that goes into preparing for this, and on top of that, right, this is a completely different format, right? If I had to make a choice of who I thought was going to win, I'd probably go with Bryson DeChambeau. But
that personal bias.
I mean, not really. It's just, I think when you take a look at that field, it's like, who does he have to beat? Brooks, Dustin, and
I'm teasing you because I know you're a Bryson guy.
Yeah, but at the same time, right, you take a look at the reasons why, right, these guys do it, and we could spend a bunch of time discussing the pros and the cons and everything in between. But I think what most people need to realize is that, if they don't already, that there is a multitude of reasons why people do the things they do. And they might not be the same as you, and they might be the same as how you think. You always want to give the person a chance to explain themselves, but if they're being an a-hole, like a Brooks Koepka to the media, then, like, that's his prerogative. If he wants to be an a-hole and he wants to be the villain and he wants to be the heel, then so be it. Let him be the heel. And then most people will treat him as such, right? Like, that's what he wants. That's what he'll get. At the same time, if guys like Bryson want to say, hey, look, it's a business decision, then it's a business decision, right? You have to consider that. That's the stuff that, I'm trying to wrap my head around, is what are the reasons why people do, and then especially in this case, what are the reasons why they did what they did, right? Excluding what they say, because I never believe what people say anymore. I'm such a curmudgeon and like a pessimist when it comes to that stuff. And like, especially when you're talking to the media and an athlete talking to the media, you have like Mike Tomlin, and there's like 2 or 3 other people that maybe tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Like when they're in front of a mic.
Not to cut you out. I've always said, I'm going to just, you put the idea back in my head. I'm going to resurface it. But I've been saying for years, a segment on one of our shows, if not a standalone sort of social segment in and of itself, we should do basically the DK translator, or call it whatever you want. But anytime a coach or an athlete says something that is just so patently false, we should have our analysts like yourself interpret what it is they're really saying, while we're just cutting through the BS.
Is this going to be behind the paywall? Because there might be some expletives.
It should be.
But yeah, no, absolutely. Because, and so this is why, right? Like, again, I rarely, like, then this goes to what I'm about to say is I don't believe what they say. I believe what they do. Mm-hmm. And if you look at what these guys are doing, I think the biggest reason on why these guys are here, right, is that, and like all the other stuff, right? Like the spending more time with your family. You and I and most people work 50 weeks a year, mm-hmm. right? Like spending more time with your family as a PGA Tour professional, like, I get that it's still a job and they travel a lot and they're on the road a lot, but give me a break. Everybody has to do a job.
You can also bring your family on the road to all of these.
Right. You're getting paid copious amounts of money to play a sport that you love, right? Like it's your job. I get it. It's still a job, but give me a break with that. You're getting a lot of money. I think what's happening is the guaranteed money part, right? If you take a look at the comparison with any other sport of superstars and the NBA, right? Take KD, Kyrie, Steph, LeBron, right? Jokic, all of these guys, Doncic, like every single Giannis, they have a piss poor game. They're getting paid their contract no matter what. If John Rahm or Tiger Woods misses the cut, they get $0, 0.00 from the tournament. They still get their endorsements, but now you scale that out to the guys who are 50th in the world, 75th, 100th, 125th, right? That matters, but especially at the top, right? John Rahm, he was the best player last year. He made $7 million in prize money. I'm seeing these contracts of guys that I don't even know who they are. They're getting 4 years, $140 million,
right?
For like most of it guaranteed.
Well, who was it? There was the one dude. I don't expect you to remember because I
Tim Hardaway Jr.
Is that who it was? There was the guy that like he made more off his contract, or no, not even his contract. He made more playing in his first live golf tournament than he had in his entire PGA career. Like, years. Going into the event.
Oh yeah, I was talking about like Tim Hardaway Jr. I think when he had when he was on the Knicks, when like his contract.
Oh yeah.
I think it was more for a football. Like it was more of a football comparison with him, but yeah, like last place on Live gets 120K.
Right.
Like last place in a PGA tournament doesn't get anywhere near that. And then you have to pay your expenses, right? You have to pay your caddy's expenses, your expenses, and then taxes. At the end of the day, right? Again, for these guys, golf is the most in game, right? Is the most merit-based sport that we have, right? Like that's like if you don't play well, you don't get paid. And if you don't get paid, you can't feed your family, so on and so forth. So I think the big portion, especially for the superstars, especially for like the Brookses, the Patrick Reids, and I'm not calling those guys superstars, maybe Brooks to an extent, they're not getting that guaranteed money, right? Tiger could bring all this money to an event and all these eyeballs to the endorsement, deals and TV deals. But if he misses a cut and the 100th ranked golfer or 150th ranked golfer wins, and I was listening to Bob Harrig on Spaces earlier on Twitter, and he mentioned this, that person can make more money than Tiger that week.
Yeah.
And the 100th ranked person didn't bring anybody to the golf tournament besides him and his family, right? Like that is in itself something that the PGA Tour needs to consider. And then when it comes to like the John Deere, the Travelers, the Barbasol, like the Bermuda, all these other tournaments, they're not going to attract anybody other than golfers that most people don't know about, right? So how do you now change how golf is being perceived, and then how the players the top players especially can get paid, and how that can trickle down to the guys who don't? But again, like you still need to play well, right? That's how you make money in golf.
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate some of what you just said, but when Brooks Koepka yesterday or the day before gave his reasoning for ultimately leaving for Live, I laughed because part of the reasoning was, as you alluded to, spending more time with family and that sort of thing. It's definitely about the money. It's absolutely about the money because one, the money's insane. The contracts are ridiculous, and we could outline all of them. We won't. You can look them up, but they're nuts.
Right.
Reed, mentioned before, but also, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong because I don't know golf as certainly as well as you do, but I don't know it as well as I know the team sports.
Yeah.
You can set, I mean, I've heard golfers say this, like you can set your own schedule. Yeah, and yes, it affects you ultimately in the FedEx Cup standings and all of that. And you don't play, you don't make money, short of your endorsements. Like I get that. But if your objective is not ultimately your contract, it's spending more money, more time with your family, don't play as much. Like take some more tournaments off. You don't have to leave the PGA.
Yeah, and so yes, right. Like I think on face value, that's like on the surface, that's what it seems like, and that to an extent, that's what it is, right? Like you can make your own decision. You can make your own decisions, especially if you're an independent contractor. If you don't want to work, you don't work, right? If like you don't want to show up and do the show, right? Like you don't have to, but then we don't get paid. Right. That's usually how things go in life. Right. and I think that's where a lot of people, a lot of golfers maybe like lose sight of like like this is how things work. Right. Like this is how the world works. And the one issue, though, with that Koff is if you skip an event. Right. And let's say you're injured. Right. You're not just skipping it because you want to skip it. If you're injured and you miss 2-3 events, like you have to, right, 2 to 3 weeks, then on the FedEx Cup, you're basically behind the 8 ball. And then you got to go like 5-6 weeks in a row. And even though it's golf, and even though we think, man, these guys are playing golf for a living, like, you're doing a lot, especially if you want to play well.
More than anything else.
Traveling. It's the traveling. It's, you're playing in the elements. And especially in these months, it can get really hot. I was in Connecticut last week and it was in the 90s. So like if you're not careful, you can get hurt. And if you get hurt, especially when you golf, because you're using your entire body, and I'm not saying it's as strenuous as football, basketball, baseball, or any other sport for that matter.
As evidence looking at some professional
right, exactly. Although I've seen some baseball players who look like golfers. Let's be honest, Bartolo Colon. Like you can be Pudge Rodriguez, and Pudge was fantastic, really athletic, fantastic player. But you can be someone with a nickname Pudge and play baseball. Aaron Judge is the best player, best hitter that I've seen in a long time, and he's a specimen. But you also look at Tiger Woods. Sure. Right. They're right at the top of their game. These guys are all the same. Their fitness is high level. Yeah. But like you get behind the 8 ball in how the current setup is. It's like if you don't play, you're gonna get those FedEx Cup points. You'd be lucky if you make the playoffs come, and that's what the PGA Tour wants. They want their players to be playing all the time. But on some level, right, these guys are traveling, a lot back to back. And it can get a lot, right? Every other sports team, they have their home games. Mm-hmm. They have stretches where they're at home for 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. PGA Tour, that's never the case. You could be at home for a week if the tournament is being played where you live. That's pretty much it.
All right, well, that's pretty much it with this show, too, because we are creeping on up to 6, which also means there is a Madden sim coming your way in just a few minutes. I see in the chat on YouTube, Carter saying, come on, Kaufman, you want to talk about the Jacksonville, New York Madden sim coming up. Is the Giants, is the Jets? Either way, I know it's going to be fun for all of you. Get your lineups in. You have a few minutes to do that. And make sure that while you're doing that and tracking your lineups and trying to win money off those sims, you are paying close attention to Twitter because NBA free agency. It could be a wild evening, could be a lot of fun. Do you have, I'm totally putting you on the spot because we're going to go here, Reed, but do you have any bold predictions for tonight in free agency?
Katie goes to the Kings.
To the Kings. You're the best.
I heard Sacramento is beautiful this time of year.
Is it ever any time of year?
Capital of California.
Yeah, well, that's true. It doesn't make it the best spot, though. Thanks to Eamon. Thanks to T. Pike. Thanks, obviously, to Fryer for joining us earlier, lending his expertise. And, of course, Reed T. Fowler. I'm Adam Kaufman. The Sweat tomorrow morning, I'm sure, will be a recap of not only round 1 of the John Deere, but also, of course, day one of NBA free agency. And tomorrow you will have the slate once again. A lot of baseball talk. Bukes and LaMarca coming at you right around 5:15. Same YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter spaces. So enjoy. Reid. Have a great night.
You too, bud.